Welcome back, my friends, to the Alyosha Society. Right here, we're pursuing truth and beauty and goodness through great literature. And as you probably know by now, we are doing video number 2 here out of 5 total videos on the Screwtape letters. Friends, can you cover Screwtape in 5 lessons? Of course not. Just like you can't cover Frankenstein in 10 or whatever number of videos I did for the other books. I'm trying to give you the tools, the information, get into that literary toolbox, the historical biographical approach that you need to dive into it way deeper on your own. So let's get right to it. Get a little reminder on where we are with our outline of videos and so forth. There we have it. There is C.S. Lewis, of course. All right, so remember the previous video, we did the introduction. We looked at Lewis's life, the fact that he served in World War I, the fact that he wrote Screwtape during World War II, lost his mom when he was 10, lost his wife later in life. All these kinds of things come into play. We looked at the genre of this work, epistolary novel, and we'll do a review of what are the things. Remember, who's writing, from whose perspective is it? Does it go back and forth? This is Screwtape. This is an elder demon who, in this semi-imaginary world, we believe it's real. We do believe in devils and demons and such, just not the details and specifics here. It's fictional. That perhaps Screwtape has, higher demons over him. They're putting pressure on him. Hey, your people are becoming Christians, or they're doing good things, which are bad things, and so forth. So he's writing to his nephew Wormwood and giving him advice on how to corrupt his patient. So what's the relationship? We talked about that already. How much time elapses? Well, it's hard to tell exactly. We do know that when the Screwtape led the earlier letters, the war had not begun yet, and it begins. So there's some time going by here. Don't get the feeling that it's decades, but maybe a few years. He becomes a Christian and so forth during actually, and I think letter number 2. The secretive issue, I don't think is really a big issue here. And are they truthful? So when you're reading these are not questions that you would only use when you're doing Screwtape letters. I hope you get my point here. These are questions that you would look at when you're reading any epistolary novel. All right. So yeah, I thought I would just throw this out there. There are a number of novels, and friends, I'm only listing a few of them here, that are very well-known stories, and you just may not have necessarily known that they were epistolary novels. Jane Austen wrote an epistolary novel called Lady Susan. Gilead, Marilyn Robinson, very, very popular author these days. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, we talked about that. One of Fyodor Dostoevsky's very first works in 1846, Poor Folk, is an epistolary novel between an older male and a younger female. Then you've got Alice Walker's The Color Purple. That one, my friends, is hard to read and graphic and well done in many ways, but it's an epistolary novel. This little girl, Celia, is writing letters to God and asking him, why she's going through all these horrendous things. So it's interesting for me to think how, and we'll do this in the Monday night class. Okay, in fact, we already did it with Frankenstein, but we'll do it again. What is different about the epistolary genre or format? Like, what can you accomplish? So, I think there are pluses and minuses. I'm not going to review those here. The third person omniscient narrator, there are things you can do with that you can't do here. But there are things you can do in this epistolary format that allow for a bit more intimacy, inner thoughts of an individual or individuals that you really wouldn't be able to pull off as well in what you might call a traditional format. So lots of cool stuff to think about. Again, in the Monday night class, we'll talk about some of that. All right. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at letters 1 through 7. I am going to be dwelling on 2 and 7 a little bit more, but there's so much to cover here. I love number 1. You notice in number 1, Screwtape is telling Wormwood, not, some folks would say, "Ooh, science, science disproves the Bible, and we have all these problems and all this tension with science." C.S. Lewis is instructing us, don't think like that. Look, if the Bible's true, it's true. If it's true, then whatever it says about science or biology or archaeology or whatever is true. It's not exhaustive in those disciplines, but don't be afraid of science. So he has the demons here being the ones who are afraid of science. Oh, no, we don't want actual real science. Keep the emphasis on feelings and emotions, not real science and logic. I love that C.S. Lewis begins the Screwtape letters with this, because I get the impression that a lot of Christians think of the relationship between science and the Christian faith in exactly the opposite way. But anyway, I want to camp a little bit into, so the patient becomes a Christian. Screwtape's not happy about that. He wants Wormwood to, quote, capitalize on an initial dryness. Now, if you happen to have your copy of the Screwtape letters handy, I do not assume that our page numbers are going to line up. So I'm not even going to try to go with page numbers, but I'm in number 2. They're only a few pages each. I am going to dwell here right in the middle of it. It's in the second paragraph, but the second paragraph goes on forever. If you can find a place that says, "No matter, your patient, thanks to our Father below, is a fool, provided that any of those neighbors sing out of tune, have boots that squeak, double chins, or odd clothes, the patient will quite easily believe that their religion must therefore be somehow ridiculous." Okay, just make sure we understand what's going on here. Screwtape is telling Wormwood, look, if your patient just became a Christian, that's bad. But now we want him to look at people who are Christians, who are doing ridiculous things, and then conclude, oh, my Christian faith must be ridiculous and wrong if people who say they're Christians are doing these wrong things. Now, that reminds me, and I want to dwell on this because I think it's huge. Sort of a broader context here that I want to look at. I call the table legs. The table legs. Now, what I'm getting at here is, as an instructor, a teacher who's been working with middle school and high school students for 30 years now, I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of former students, went to schools where I was teaching, who end up leaving, going to college or doing whatever, and they walk away from their faith, either temporarily or maybe permanently. And I ask them the reason that they're walking away from their faith. And sometimes their reasons are ridiculous. They're not reasons that really have anything to do with the truth or validity of the Christian faith. So I have an illustration here that I call the table legs, and I want to share that with you. So the question is this: what issue, if it were true, would cause you to conclude, I cannot believe in the Christian faith anymore? I can't do it. Right? What would have to be true? In other words, what are the legs that are holding up the table? So this table, of course, represents your faith. My question to you is, what leg or legs are under your table, so that if that leg were ripped out, you couldn't be a Christian anymore? And if you look at these on YouTube, they're called faith deconstructions, and they're very popular, and even some fairly famous people have come out with their faith deconstruction because they noticed certain observations and concluded that Christianity can't be true. I'll tell you one very popular one. I won't name any names. I know, this is not me talking, this is someone else. I know Christians who are racists. If there are Christians who are racist, I can't be a Christian and Christianity can't be true. Now, friends, it's terrible, it's awful, and it's sad, and it's wrong if there's a Christian who claims to believe in the true and living God, but has racist ideas and believes in things that are racist. Of course, that's terrible and it's wrong. But it doesn't mean that the Christian faith itself is invalid. So what you've done is you've put a leg under the table, and that leg would be labeled something like, some Christians are racists. So the leg under the table that would have to support you believing in the Christian faith would be, no Christians at all are ever racist. Well, friends, that's not a leg under the table. That is not something that causes the Christian faith to either stand or fall either way. That's just an example. It may not even really be the best example. I want to give you some examples of things that I have observed over the years that are some of these extra legs that shouldn't be under the table. I'm confused about baptism. There's some people that baptize babies and some people that don't baptize babies. I'm confused by it. I can't figure it out. The church doesn't know what it's doing. Therefore, Christianity can't be true. Maybe the same about the Lord's Supper. Oh, this is a big one. Oh, Mr. Etter, I had teachers that told me that people who believe in an old earth or an old universe, they don't believe the Bible. Well, I did some research and I found out that I actually do believe now that the earth is younger or older than I thought. Therefore, that is a leg under my table. So your leg is age of the earth. And I've concluded that because of what I now believe about the age of the earth, I can't believe in the Christian faith. Friends, the Christian faith doesn't have anything to do with the validity of the Christian faith. It doesn't have anything to do with how old the earth is. Not at all. Theistic evolution, kind of tied to number 2. Oh, Mr. Etter, I don't know what to do. I'm looking at the evidence and it seems like there are good arguments for evolution. Now, look, my point here is not to argue about evolution. I don't personally believe in Darwinian evolution, but let's just say that you concluded that evolution is true. It's not a leg under the table. It's not a leg under the table, one way or the other. Therefore, if you're wrestling with the issue of origins, which we all do kind of at some point, you don't toss your faith in the true and living God and Jesus Christ and the veracity of Scripture just because you can't figure out all the details about origins. It's not a leg under the table. Oh, friends, this one's big. This one is huge, and I know it has caused a lot of people to stumble in our day and age. Is the issue of homosexuality, is it nature or nurture? Are people born with a propensity or a gene or an inclination? Whatever word you want to use, I don't care. My point is not to answer that question here. But let's just say that you conclude, Mr. Etter, look, I've really thought deeply about this, and I believe that some people are born with some sort of inclination in that direction. Therefore, Christianity can't be true. No, it's not a leg under the table either way, whatever you conclude about it. Well, Mr. Etter, what are the legs? I'm going to get to that. I'm telling you what are not legs under the table. We are going to get to what are the legs. Documentary hypothesis. I struggled with that one my first couple of years in college. I'm not even going to get into that. You can look that one up. Contradiction in the Bible. Now, do I believe there are contradictions in the Bible? No. Can you find a gazillion people on whatever, on social media who say, oh, look at that. That's a contradiction. Okay, fine. maybe we don't know how to explain it yet. Maybe it looks like a contradiction, but guess what, guys? It's not a leg under the table. You don't wait until you've reconciled every possible potential contradiction in the Bible before you conclude I'm going to be a Christian. You're never going to be able to do that. There are always going to be things that are confusing, that you won't answer, that seem like contradictions or paradoxes, whatever. All of the baptism, age of the earth, all these things. The Trinity. Yeah, I don't understand the Trinity, so Christianity can't be true. Come on. And the bottom, I saved the big one for last. This is the one that trips up probably the most people. I cannot believe that there can be such evil and suffering and misery in the world and still be a good God. Okay, I get it. I sympathize with that thought. You should read The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's a great book to help you wrestle through that. He wrestled through it, and every thinking Christian for the last 2,000 years has wrestled with it. So my point isn't to answer it here. My point is to say, guys, even that is not a leg under the table. In other words, the leg would read, solving the problem of evil. That's a leg under the table. No, it's not. Get it out of there. Stop allowing these legs to be supports for your Christian faith. No, well, Mr. Eder, what should be? Well, first of all, let's take a look at another little illustration here. Which is true? Does the Christian faith have a whole bunch of legs that are supports for it, that make it true or not true? Or is there just one single solitary leg under the table? For the sake of time, I'm going to have you look up 1 Corinthians 15:14. But in 1 Corinthians 15, what Paul is essentially arguing here is, if the resurrection of Christ happened, it's all true. If the resurrection of Christ did not happen, then go home, close the doors of your churches and your Christian schools, sleep in on Sundays, because you're still in your sins. Everything we're doing is in vain. There's one single solitary leg under the table, my friends. And back to Screwtape letter number 2. It's not whether or not your neighbors can sing in tune, have boots that aren't squeaky, don't have double chins or weird clothes. You see, what Screwtape is trying to do here to the patient, we'll call him Jeff. Okay, I got to have a name, guys. He is trying to get Jeff to place legs under the table that shouldn't be there. And it's really, a lot of this is more of an emotional response than it is a rational, deeply philosophical, theological argument. It's Christians get on my nerves, therefore Christianity can't be true. Well, get used to people getting on your nerves, because I don't care what you believe, people are going to get on your nerves. So I hope that's been helpful. I wanted to spend more time on this. I know that C.S. Lewis only dwells a few lines on it here in the letter number 2, but this is huge. This is a really big issue, and I wanted you to think a little bit more broadly about it. That's why I have apparently 101 slides. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through these. Yeah, so here we go. Bottom line, if your table has anything other than the empty tomb, if your table legs or anything other than the empty tomb, then you have added legs that are not supposed to be there. Okay, let's get back. So that's letter number 2. Number 3, advice on how to exploit the relationship with the mother. Now, this one is fascinating to me because notice, guys, Satan's, better be careful how I use superlatives here. I'm just going to go ahead and say it for the sake of effect. Satan's scariest quality might be that he operates in the realm of the unexpected. In other words, deception. He is not going to attempt to deceive you in ways that you're already prepared and that you already kind of have, your barrier up and you're ready to do battle. No. So he's not encouraging the patient to hate his mother or kill his mother. Come on, that's too obvious. All you really need to do is just cause him to be a little bit annoyed by her, and that will create the effect you want. This is number 3. They're labeled in letter number 3. When two humans have lived together for many years, it usually happens that each has tones of voice and expressions of face that are almost unendurably irritating to the other. Work on that. Now, friends, that scares me a little bit. I've been married to the same woman for 30 years, and I know I say things that annoy her. She does things that are annoying to me, and I never really thought of it as, oh, my goodness, Screwtape is doing his work here. He's kind of getting me to just kind of have this little almost subconscious, subliminal kind of annoyance with my mom, my brother, my children, my wife. Watch out for that. Watch out for that. Number 4, this one's fantastic. Make sure that his prayers are shallow. Now, you see what I mean by the unexpected? Don't go to your patient, Screwtape says, don't get him not to pray. That's too obvious. Make sure he's praying. What? A demon is going to be okay if a person is praying? Yes, because it's more deceptive. It's the kind of prayer. Don't allow him to have deep prayers where he basically unburdens his soul to God, because that is intimacy. That is what really draws people closer to God, and that's how he draws people closer to himself. Don't kill his prayer time. Just make sure it's very shallow. Friends, listen, number 4 is fantastic. Yeah. So here, the best thing is to keep the patient from the serious intention of praying altogether. I'm going to skip over and read a few lines here and there. This is the kind of prayer that we want. It's funny how mortals always picture us putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping them out. Friends, see how that's underlined? Underline that one. That's a really good one. Teach them to estimate the value of each prayer by their success in producing the desired feelings. Never let them suspect how much success or failure or of that kind depends on whether or not they're well or ill or fresh or tired. So make sure it's okay if they pray, just not deep prayers. Maybe memorized rote prayers where they don't even really are not even really thinking about what they're saying. That would be good, because then they think they've said their prayers, but they're not really growing in intimacy in their relationship with God. Now, for number 5, I'm going to hold off because he talks about the same thing in number 7, which I'm going to be dwelling on a little bit more. So World War II begins in letter number 5. So capitalize, and we'll talk about the extreme patriot, ardent pacifist. So I'm just gonna go right to number 6 here. Direct his malice to those close by, his benevolence to those far away. Dostoevsky says in The Brothers Karamazov, one of his characters says, I love humanity, but I sure do hate people. This sort of virtue signaling where people talk about loving humanity or serving the poor or whatever. Okay, those things aren't necessarily bad, but it's really easy to love and serve humanity. But when you think about actually, walking across the street to talk to or minister to or help that person who has a name and a face and who has annoying habits, it's not as easy. So direct him to have thoughts like, I love humanity. But once he starts serving actual individuals with names, Screwtape says we're going to be in a world of hurt. We don't want him moving in that direction. All right, let's go to number 7. And there's a lot of really good stuff here. The first one is, what is the cruel dilemma? What is the cruel dilemma? Let me read the very beginning of 7. I wonder, you should ask me, whether it's essential to keep the patient in ignorance of your existence. That question, at least for the present phase of the struggle, has been answered for us by the high command. Our policy for the moment is to conceal ourselves. Of course, this has not always been so. We are really faced with a cruel limit. So what he's saying here is, what is really best for Satan? That people believe in him, or that they don't believe in him? And it sounds like what C.S. Lewis is trying to communicate here is that from the demonic perspective, the jury's kind of out. You know, if we do believe in devils and Satan, then certainly Satan would prefer that we have some hokey view of, you know, some dude in red tights and a bifurcated tail and running around with a pitchfork, you know, little horns. He, I'm going to destroy thee. Okay. That's just some sort of cheesy, cartoonish caricature. So I think Satan would be thrilled if we believe in him, and that's the picture we have. But if we have a picture, which I don't think we do, I don't think any of us really understands what pure evil would look like. So that's just an interesting part of number 7. Let's go to number 3 here on the screen, and we'll finish out with that. So the war has begun. And when wars happen, the question of patriotism always comes up. It happens, you know, with us. I was alive when 9/11 happened. I was alive for Desert Storm. And when these things are going on, there's always this question of, you know, should we be pro-war or anti-war? Then what is it that makes you a patriot? You know, what does it mean to be patriotic? And Screwtape is counseling Wormwood here. Well, here's the deal. It's okay if they want to be patriotic. And it's okay even if they don't want to be patriotic. But here's what you have to do. You have to get your patient, push your patient to one of the extremes. Either push him to become an extreme patriot, you know, sort of God and country, where he kind of gets his patriotism and his Christian faith kind of mixed up together, you know, maybe to the point where he doesn't even understand what's the difference between the church and a certain political party. For your patient, you know, you kind of want them to be synonymous, get them all mixed up in the cauldron there, and that'll be a lot more helpful to you. He talks at the opening of number 7 about, if we can produce our perfect work, the materialist magician, the man not using but veritably worshiping what he vaguely calls forces while denying the existence of spirits. Now, in number 7, he goes on to kind of flesh out this whole idea of pushing the patient to one extremes. I'm reading from the last paragraph. Whichever he adopts, your main task will be the same. Let him begin by treating patriotism or pacifism, watch this, as a part of his religion. Oh boy, I'm speaking as a citizen of the United States, and it makes me a little nervous when I hear people say, well, you can't be a Christian and be a Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, fill in the blank. Friends, they're not connected. Okay, you're putting legs under the table that aren't there. And according to C.S. Lewis, Satan loves that. Okay, your political affiliation doesn't dictate or indicate or reveal what your relationship to God is like, totally and completely. Let him, under the influence of partisan spirit, come to regard it as the most important part. So they become so obsessed with politics that the politics side of it kind of takes over the relationship with God side of it. And the patient is actually turning away from God and doesn't even realize it. According to C.S. Lewis, Satan loves that. Then quietly and gradually nurse him onto the stage at which the religion becomes merely part of the cause. Ha ha ha, this is good. In which Christianity is valued chiefly because of the excellent arguments it can produce in favor of the British war effort or of pacifism. So my religion is important to me. My faith is important to me because it helps me promote the Democrat Party, the Independent Party, the Republican Party. Friends, we need to beware that we are being deceived and duped. At least according to C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to have to agree with him on this. Once you have made the world an end and faith a means, you have almost won your man. And it makes very little difference what kind of worldly end he is pursuing. You see what he's saying there? You have turned him away from God by causing him to think that his faith and his politics are inextricably bound in this way. So, mission accomplished. There we have it. Screwtape letters 1 through 7. And I can't believe, how in the world are we going to do this? There's too much here, guys. I don't even know how long this video ended up going, but I think it ended up going a longer than I thought. If this is the first set of videos you've watched, I've told my viewers I'm trying to keep these to like 20 to 22 minutes, but it's not working. Here's the outline. We've done videos 1 and 2. This is the end of video 2. In the next video, we'll pick up the action with Screwtape letters 8 through 16. 8 through 16. So be sure you read those before you watch the next video.